All right. During live stream. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I hope that anybody who was following on the streaming is back on. And we're going to go ahead now. A little bit of study. Take our votes. Go to the back of the books. Okay. If anybody's watching YouTube or Facebook, I hope you are able to see it. Okay, and we're going to go ahead. Just not preparing a live screen. Huh?
Normally you're hardwired in there.
In there. It says live streaming the service and it says preparing the service. Well, it is what it is. Okay. Off screen. Good. Gonna go ahead. Page 656. Wait a minute. Yeah, page 656. Oh, there we go. All right. 656. What does one want in life? This is the question. So for this teacher, verse 5, page 656. Do not seek high position and high power for yourself. Don't run after. Hamdanut is driving desire and passion. The same thing as in the 10th of the 10 Commandments, lo tachmod, you shall not desire. Al tachmod kavod, don't look for honor and glory for yourself. V'yoter milimudecha aseh, do more. Let's say this, it says, let your deeds exceed your studies. As much as you may have indulged in the life of Torah, and that's exactly what the sentence says before it, about the life of Torah is the greatest thing. Even there, do more than you have learned. Act, work on it. Carry out mitzvot, ben adam lachavero, ben adam lamakom. Don't just sit inside your brain. Do not desire to be invited to the king's banquets. Don't be one of those social climbers? That's right. Don't put, King Charles didn't invite me to the banquet. Don't worry. All right.
I was going to add, if I said someone asked me things about me, and I told them, well, I'm 6'6" and I weigh 150 pounds. And they look at me in a dubious way. Is that kosher to say that? I'm 6'6" and 150 pounds.
Is that correct?
Well, you could measure me.
I could measure.
Put me on the scale.
Approximate. Okay, that's just a. So, in other words, you're not trying to say, I am the greatest man on earth. You're not like Muhammad Ali, I'm the greatest. You're not saying that. All right? He was great, but not greatest, right? And don't get carried away. Don't get carried away. That's the main thing. But this is very good. Don't try to hobnob among the powerful. You are at a greater banquet. You are at a greater banquet. Your table is bigger than their table. You have a bigger crown than the king's crown. And on top of that, for sure, the guy who's hired you to do your work, to do his work, you can be sure that when you work for God, you get paid. When you work for the king or for the powerful, you have no guarantee. They'll cut you off, they'll cut you down. Look at Prigozhin, right? Okay, there's your example, all right? Or like the set of Herod, it was better to be his dog than to be his friend. So, in other words, what our goal is, and now we're doing it, some people it's the life of the yeshiva, some people it is working in the real world, but the goal, how do we carry out a life of both knowing what we're doing and enacting life of mitzvot, of doing things that are expected of us, taking up the challenges. Those are that is the entity of the human person. The other stuff, how many likes we get on a Twitter feed and so on, okay, all right? Although people do get good money out of it. Oh, it's no X in it, it's no Twitter, it's an X, okay, or whatever, Instagram, whatever, all right? People make money off of it, but so, everybody makes money off of something. That doesn't make you great. What makes you great is not what you build around you, people around you. So there, our word for wisdom today. Joe, you are with us this Shabbat after, where were you this week?
Tyson, California.
And that's up by
Oakland.
Oakland. You know, the Livermore, the laboratories, right? That's the Oppenheimer thing with Livermore there, right? Lawrence Livermore in the movie. So let's go ahead, page 20. Page 20. The Kaddish, the Rabbanan. Would you lead us, please, Joe? Yit Gadol. Go ahead. Yit Gadol. Kaddish. Amen. 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 You may be seated. Now ready for the reading of the Torah. So we have moved the ark to the table. We're going to continue page 394. 394.
Read 110.
94. אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור, אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד, אדוני עוז, לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך, את עמו בשלום, הרחמים, היטיבה ברצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבב בטחנו, מלך ערום ונישא, אדון עולמים. Yeah, that's it. You open the ark. Vahi ben Saron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, Veyafotzo, Oivecha, Veyanusu Mesanecha, mipanecha ki mitzion teitzei Torah ki mitzion teitzei Torah udevar Adonai miYerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah L'amo Yisrael B'kedushato. Then page 298. Hey, be'anarachet ve'lishmei kadisha kadisha yakira ana amatush bechan be'anarachet ve'lishmei kadisha kadisha yakira ana amatush bechan Yehrava Adamach Detiftach libi beoraita Tashlim mishalin delibi Veliba decholamach Yisrael Letavu chayin velishlam Amen. And I need someone to raise the Torah. Strong arms. And repeat after me. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Yonera Shemo Yachdav Lecha Adonai HaGedola VeHaGevora VaTiferet VaNetzach VaHod Ki Chov Hashem Yim U'Ba'aretz Ki Chov Hashemayim U'Ba'aretz Lecha Adonai HaMamlecha VaMitnaseh L'Chol Rosh Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu L'Adam Raglav Kadoshu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu L'Har Kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Let's take 1 second here. Look at something here till we're ready. It's working. Just okay. Good. Yeah, I'm going to move this. Yeah. Okay. So we start for all of you, those of you who have joined in on the live stream. You notice the chapel is empty in the background, and that is because we are actually in the lobby. We had rain, the once in 100-year California rain, in the middle of the summer. And the water came into the chapel. That's after the roof was already fixed. God promised he would never send a rain that would flood the earth, but he did not promise that he would not send a rain that would flood the chapel. That he didn't promise. So, and we get it all the time. And we still have water spots. Okay, so they're drying it out. So we are here. And so you are watching me. I will just shortly turn the camera. You'll be able to see our Torah reading, as I take everything over there. So our Torah reading, though, very interesting, very interesting. It is now in the realm of civil and criminal laws. It started with Shoftim, the previous portion on judges, and Shoftim went on to the question of war. What happens in the middle of a war when we're attacking trees? We protect the fruit-bearing trees. What happens when there's a slain body? Who's the responsible one? And now we come to continuing the issue of warfare, and now moving on into the crossover between where does warfare go into family law, and now going into family law. And it's a very problematic area. If I were just coming out and reading this without knowing the context of history, I say, gee, this is very cruel. They put women in a bad spot. It says you can take the captive woman. Wait, it says you can put away a wife. It says that a woman is, has illicit sex. She's in trouble. Oh, it's very anti-feminist. But if you realize what the context of the world is, and that in 3,000 years ago, give or take a few centuries, I'm not that. Don't worry about that. We're not in a time machine. You ever take it in that context? The male is all dominant in that world. All dominant, all powerful. Go to the Romans, actually, quite a few centuries afterwards, and they have what's called the pater familias, the father of the household, who has absolute authority over everyone in the family. And that is his wife, his children, his slaves. And if he's upset and he kills them, that is his authority. Now we understand what world we're coming from. Now it begins to make sense. We're in a world where when you go to war, every woman is fair prey. Every woman is fair prey that you're captive. All right? What did ISIS do with the Yazidi women? All right? Every woman is fair prey. They did that in the name of religion. So, and that was this century. 3,000 years ago, what did they say? No. Now we're putting limits on what is the pater familias. They couldn't get rid of everything right away and suddenly make everybody. We have reality, the economics, the issues that we're still grappling with. The point is that what the Torah is setting for us is now a pattern. And the pattern is, where do we restrain the power of the male, balance with the needs of the female, or the power of the female, balance. And we also accept that it is not the written text of the Torah to which we are frozen, but the Torah requires ongoing interpretation. And take the principles that are established here and now adapt them as we come into our times. And that's the essence of Judaism. That is what we call rabbinic Judaism. As I've been talking about this, development, reflecting the needs as civilization changes. So what has changed here? By the way, it is understood that this part, Dvarim, Book of Deuteronomy, was the book that was found during the reconstruction of the temple under King Yoshiyahu, and it was a woman who gave it the sanction. Nobody knew what this was. They went to a woman, Huldah, the prophetess, Huldah HaNeviah, and she said, this is a sacred book. This is the book of the Torah. So it is a woman who gives it her stamp of approval. So what's changed here? We start out the very first one. A man goes out to war on your enemies. And the rabbis say they're talking about the war outside the land of Canaan. The inside land of Canaan, you're not supposed to have anybody left. Whether they did or not, that's a different story. We know they didn't. But you go and you take your captives. You see in the captives, Isha Yafat Toar. See a beautiful woman. Helen of Troy, you take her. You take her. And Hashakta ba, and you want her, and Lekachta lecha. Leisha, wait a minute. Already I have a burden. Lekachta lecha leisha. No. I can't do what I want. Now she's my wife. My prisoner has become my wife if I want her. Oh, did I really ask for that when I conquered this city? I have enough with my first wife, right? And we'll talk about what happens with the first wife and the second wife, because there's a complication follows afterwards. And so, what do? You can't just take her like any other soldier in any other country. There's no comfort women, like in the Japanese soldiers in China. You bring her into your household. You shave her head bald. You let her fingernails. She no longer goes. She doesn't go to the pedicure and the manicure. No, everything gets broken. The hasira et simlat shivya. She had nice Gucci clothes, whatever it was. Instead, now she's you remove them. You put on whatever you got. And she sits in your house and she cries for the loss of her father and mother. A whole month. Then you can take her. Ba'alata. Bilad Baal. It is a husband-wife relationship, not a rape, but a husband-wife relationship. And she is your wife. Now, well, what if you don't like her? Well, the rabbis say, wait a minute. What's she look like after a month of crying and wailing, and you're going out of your mind listening to her? And she's now no longer a beautiful woman. What do you think happens? You don't like. So then, shalachta lenafsha, she is absolutely free to go. You may never sell her as a slave. But you not deal with her with any kind of disgrace, because you have disgraced her in this act. So she goes free. That didn't happen in history. It wasn't done. So the rabbis make an interesting transition from this and say, well, who is the beautiful woman? It is all man's desire. We're never worried about women's desires. We assume women are smart enough to take care of themselves. It's man's desire. And they say man's desire is, okay, what do? Do we shut it out? Or do we take it inside and wait a month? And the rabbinic answer is always like the Jewish mother. Okay, kids, go out, have a good time. I'll sit in the dark. You know that line? In other words, you don't say no. You just do it in such a way that you don't feel good about it. We try to reduce the power of the desire, reduce the power, rather than repressing completely, absolute repression, saying it's not there, denying it's not there. Control it, settle down, delay it, delay gratification. We all know, by the way, in delayed gratification, that's one of the great secrets that differentiates little children who grow up to be successful people from little children who grow up to be in trouble. The ability to delay gratification. Number one differentiator, not intelligent or anything like else. Okay, so we see this, a shift down. Now, what happens now? The guy took her for a wife. Hey, he has another wife. Next step, now he's got two wives. He's stuck with her. Right, he wanted her, he got her, he's stuck with her. Now what happens? He's got one he loves and one he doesn't love. Well, she's pretty. Finished the 30 days. I put up with her for 30 days. Now she looks good. I like her. She's younger than the wife that has 10 kids. So the wife I no longer like has the firstborn son. Now she has the secondborn son. She's younger, still prettier, right? Can I give the son of the pretty wife or my favorite wife special? No. The wife that you no longer like, doesn't matter. Firstborn is the firstborn, he gets the double portion, right? Again, step down, step down. Then we get this case. What happens with us child that is stubborn and rebellious, the rabbis say, you know what happened about that woman who was taken in captivity, and then he preferred the younger son to the older son because she was and then he becomes rebellious, right? Shouldn't have done it in the first place. That's a rabbinic interpretation. That's how we get the next progression. So he says, child is stubborn and rebellious, doesn't listen to the parents, is a glutton. Can the parents get rid of him? Roman law, father does it on his own. No more. Wait a minute, parents. Just because you have a kid who's a troublesome kid, you can't put him away. You don't. It's the father doesn't decide. Aviv, it's both. When this kid is disobedient, tafsu bo aviv ve'imo, father and mother together, and they can't do it alone. They have to take it to the gate, which is the courthouse, and to the elders who are the judges, and then make their complaint, and then that child is done away with. So the rabbi asked the question, how could anybody ever do this? You ever see a Jewish mother and father? Maybe a Jewish father, yes. Would you see a Jewish mother do it? No. So they said, lo hayav lo nivra, never was and never was created. And why is it in here? Only the kids, scare the kids. Scare the kids so they'll behave. But what has changed in this? We understand here, when I talk about we never stick to the literal letter of the law, we stick to the interpretation of the law. The rabbis are no longer comfortable. Even with this is a big move down from the power of the father to destroy anybody who wishes in the family. Because the father and mother have to do it together. Power of the mother, balanced with the power of the father. And the power of the court over the power of the father and mother. In this kind of a life and death case. So now they move down a step and say, well, what is Ben Sober? How do we define it? He has to eat a certain amount of meat, and he has to drink a certain amount of wine, and it has to be from the parents' refrigerator and food pantry. It can't be stolen from the neighbors. That's a different story. And it can't be a treif. It has to be kosher. All sorts of things. And the father and mother take them together. So if the father is tall, the mother is short, too much discrepancy, it doesn't count. And wait, at what age is he a child who is liable? If a child is under bar mitzvah, he has no liability. He's a child. If he's over bar mitzvah, he's no longer under the parent's authority. He's an adult. So when can it happen? There's a weird interim period, about 3 months, when he's in transition between puberty, from childhood to teenager years. In between this 3-month period, starts to change. If you can catch him at that time, okay, go figure. By the time you get to the court, he's already older and out. So every single excuse, so that it really becomes, as they say, you're uber, you're out. Let them see and be aware, put on notice, but we never would carry it out. Right? Very classic case. Okay, so you can see many other issues where we see the attempt to take what is going on in the outside world, moderate it, modify it, and then the rabbis with the power of interpretation to adapt it to reality as we move on. So those are the things. Yeah.
The question arises here that if this has never been enacted, why it's written there? Why it's ordered? Why it's part of the book?
You're over your out. Let them read this, let them see it, and take warning. So it is to the child to scare the child straight. They do this. Yeah.
They criticize that book. In the book, your book, we think that you can get a child at the age of 13 or whatever, and kill him.
Yeah.
That is the criticism.
Yeah.
This is never, and I would say never do it and never will be done. Why where the order is found?
Yeah. And so again, the intention is it's an educational intention to put the child on notice that the things that you don't disobey mom and dad. That's it. So we're taking, as I said, we're taking what was, which is the father always had full authority, and reducing it. Now, in Islamic law, we go into the question about what if a woman is she's married, she's engaged, and so on. And what if she's raped? and we have what's called honor killings. Right, so we have the other side of the coin. I could come back to my Muslim friends and say, look, this is very common, high murder rate of women, right? Because they talked to somebody, they were seen with somebody they weren't supposed to, not they actually did something, even though in law there has to be actual witnesses and so on. So we can throw that back. We can throw that back. We don't have honor killing yet. That's dead. Courts, you have to have a system. So that is the answer. Now I'm curious, I don't know if the Quran deals with something like that. It'd be interesting to see. Or the Hadith probably has in the traditions, I'm sure. And probably is very similar. Yeah.
At the end of the chapter, it says, if Moabite, no descendants of them will never be able to them,
Right.
the type of the temple.
10th generation, yeah.
If they are Egyptians, or Edomites,
Yeah.
after the first generation, they will do.
Yeah.
What is, how is interpreted today?
Now, you know what's very interesting? The rabbis asked the question. Number one, they had the problem. What about Ruth? She is Moabite. Well, they said, okay, says Moabite, Moabi, male. Doesn't say Moabiyah, female. Solved it. That's how they solved it. But then they said, since the destruction of the temple, when, well, first with the Assyrians and then the Babylonians, they came in, they destroyed all the populations of the land of Israel and on both sides of the banks of the Jordan. All those populations were carried off into exile and replaced with other populations. So we have no Moabites and no Edomites, just as there were no Israelites anymore. And that way they solved it. They say all the laws about Canaanites do not exist. All the laws that are regarding any of these people do not exist. The Edomites that come in afterwards are different. They're a different population than the original Edomites. Yeah, so the Egyptians, yeah, so but the Egyptians are allowed in. The Egyptians are brought in. That way they solve that problem. All these laws about no compassionate countenance, all these populations were mixed up. We have an idea the original population is all exiled, all carried off into captivity. Foreigners were brought in to replace them, and hence the laws are void, right? So it's the power of interpretation.
Also, there was a very stark command about the people who used to live in Israel before Canaanites. If they conquer the city, they should not leave anybody alive.
Right.
Now, so it was very strong commitment not to do it.
Right.
But actually, in reality, in the history of Israel, after 500 years later, that was never done.
But we never, yeah, because it was a theory in theory, and it was, we may say after the fact, it was never carried out, never fulfilled. And this is, we may say, after the fact warning, I told you they were going to cause you troubles because the pagan customs of the Canaanites are still there, impacting the ancient Israelites. So it is a kind of after the fact warning, which was never carried out. But as I said, the rabbis solved the problem saying there's no such thing as Canaanites anymore.
But
None of the peoples exist.
so the prophets, they were killing the Israeli prophets as well as killing the other prophets. So depending on the king of the time.
Yeah, no, they were, yeah. So, I mean, when we talk about Canaanites, Jezebel, Phoenicians, that was Canaanites. The word Canaan means the Phoenicians just as much as those of Canaanites in the land of Israel. That's an example of Canaanites, right? They weren't part of the land of Israel proper, but that's what were part of the problems. Yeah, let's go ahead. Start with the Torah reading. Okay, and move this over here. Second. move this around. Let me. Second. There we go. Now, going to face this way. There we go. I hope that those of you who are watching will be able to see. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you, Joe. That's sort of, right? I think that's. I don't have any, Jeff, I did me a favor. Aside on the majority, there's the Torah blessings. Yeah. Okay, and our resident. Yeah. Our resident God is back in town. We're tired. Over here. Yeah. Versus. As reported.
I haven't waited on you.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, this is the Russian version. Ah, you got the Russian. I can read it. Jerry, I can Russian. They say the military, יש למחתך לנפשת ומחרות לא תתגרנו בכסף לא תתגרנו בה דעת אשר אנחנו גילית
Well, if you remember along on doing like the line pro and not along not talking to him, or I taught him night, obtain that
verses 15 through 17. תהיה נא לשתי נשים, אחת ערבה ואחת שנאה, ידעו לו בנים מהערבה והשנאה, והיה הבן הבכור לשנאה, היה ביום הנפילו את בניו את אשר יהיה לו, לא יוכל לבקר את בן ערבה על פני בן השנאה, והבכור כי את בכור בן השנאה יכיר לתת לו פי שניים וכל אשר ימצא לו, כי הוא ראשית עונו, לא משפחת הבכורה.
Baruch Adonai Olam Nanu Tveresemet Chayon Lakabatutenu Baruch Adonai Matein HaKodesh Yamot Maya Gunut.
is 18 to 21.
18 to 21,
18 to 20.
page 18 to 21.
No, personally.
What page?
Yeah, the issue is, remember, maybe the issue is what I need to put him up. Big, this look, although, below Ishmael, it's a subo, I mean, the imo, let's see what the else in the guy, Shah, maybe come up, Shah, come up, Vermando, Vermando, all else in the Europe, by name is a surrender, Umore, and then the Shumea, because they so let us say, go on, and shake it up, have a nickel for maybe the other, I will give up, but you say, oh, be around.
Baruch Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natananu Torah v'neged l'chaim olam natan le'Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu.
Continue. Number chapter 22.
842.
Verses, with the end of this, the end of 22, 21, then we continue into 22, to verse. Verse, yeah, it's it's changing distribution. Yeah, this is where it says changing distribution. That's how it goes. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. All yours. Down.
Ta'amot, but Chaim Menus. But who is Adonai Adonai? Baruch Adonai Adonai Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim. Ve'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Uma Benhalita oder an Expilot, I think the battle on SP, declare the kick back the link that we below at the Kamet that the Pashe, the Anafala, not the short Akifa or a short seven, neither painted Atlanta, and Peshe, Tashibe, Laki, having no terror, Akifa, and lawyer. Lawyer that the lawyer that so Versacco Eldo with where in fact others Africa auto with chapter law became Castle the hammer became Castle the Sinato became Castle of Avila Akifa shared about the man of Mazata not to call the Calais Lord El Hamor Africa Osho nothing but the people about him. לא ידליק גבר על אישה ולא ילבש לבד גבר סימן אישה כי דבר לא היה כל עושה אלה כי יקרה כאן סיפור לפניך או אס או על הארץ לפרקים או בצמאים או בצמאים או על בצמאים לא תיקח האם על הבנים שלך תשלח את האם ואת הבנים תיקח למה יקרה לך ורחתיים בי
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נתן בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Gotcha.
First question is, it seems pretty severe to stone a son that is basically not following the is trumping and etc. And question number two, it's only in that death do I see the woman involved. Here she is involved in his death. Otherwise, she's never involved in his raising and all of those things. And my third question is this: how
how is the Orthodox community interpreted these laws of Torah?
I mentioned that earlier.
Modern age?
Yeah, it is, they're all, as it says in the very last line of that rule about the child, Yeru Yishma Yeru. They should learn about it and be scared straight, but you never enforced it. And so the rabbis come out and said the kid was never born, never created, never existed. It's a theoretical law. And that's how they solve it. And so with a lot of laws, they just said, no, these are put in to warn us, but they're never actually enacted. And then on the mother, it's not that she makes it, it's a pattern. She comes and says the child does not listen to me or the father.
Right.
It's right, both.
Both.
So the child is supposed to be listening to the mother. The mother's involved in the education. There's nowhere it says the mother's not involved in the education. Nowhere does it say the father's involved in the education either. It just says in this one, this is where we learn the parents, kids must listen to the parents. That's to both of them. Yeah. Just as we're told in Leviticus, the child must hear both the mother and the father.
Right.
Both. And put the mother and the father in that category. So there we see this. As I said, the intention is taking away from the father full power. The father no longer has power, as in ancient Roman law, to do away with anybody in the family. And neither parents actually have the power. So the court has to listen. Take it to the elders.
Right, yeah.
So that's the second step. But we have several other things in here of interest. One is that if someone is put to death, body is put up for display and then taken down immediately.
Well, the treaty is something, you hung him, so you're not to leave the person there, and once they're gone, life is gone.
Yeah, and the question, why must I take it down? Because the Romans left bodies up for centuries. They all the bodies. Everybody did it. Everybody did it.
Here we did the same thing. In this country, go to the south and talk about.
And the body up too, right? Why do we talk about Dracula vampires, Vlad the Impaler is based on the Hungarian king who hung all the Turkish invaders and left their bodies up for all the other Turks to see, so they kept away from Hungary. Yeah, so here it says and the one who is cursed by God is hung, is standing there, and it's a defilement of the land to leave the body up. Classic rabbinic interpretation is who's being cursed? Is it that person, or is God being cursed by the body being up there? And the rabbinic interpretation is how is it possible a human being descended so far down that they had to be executed when the human being is in God's image? Let's say there's a king who has a twin. The king is the largest king, and the twin is a miserable scoundrel. And when the miserable wretch, the brother, is one to execute, and everybody said that's the king. Because when a human being has descended to such a point that his behavior is no longer in the divine image, then it's a fault of God. That was the fault of God. That's in our thinking. And so we take it down. We don't want to create that sense. Yeah.
But in all these were getting upset that, and when the kings, when they fought, they all called.
Wait. It's very interesting to slide. Joshua, and in the book of Joshua, so I point out, when he captures the Canaanite kings, he executes them and he buries them.
Yes.
He puts them into a cave. Even the enemies, the Canaanites, are given some kind of due process. Very interesting. Okay. So with that, I'd like to introduce my brother-in-law. This is Oprah's brother. Yeah, and now on the fourth Aliyah.
Yes.
Which one? Oh, the fifth Aliyah. Sixth. Which one are we on? Sixth Aliyah. Was it 13?
No, see,
No.
Yeah, not getting the census. No, it's the fifth Aliyah. First of it, 8 through 12. Okay.
What does it nine? Torah. Tot is dat kan repent ik daar aan de reactie is dat lot prospisho begonot dat lot was hannes tel bestem ja dat iedereen zegt dat aan voor zo als je kan zeggen Six 13. It's one of the last 844. 846. Okay, number 6. Number 6. Judy. And go use.
Then my son Lonnie go ahead tomorrow and tell her and tomorrow don't die. No taking I'm sorry.
Ja, ich überall wissen alle wenn sie alle stellen war wenn man ich also die Karriere wenn man sagt da wird der Abi anamara ve ima vosio edle anara azne asara ve ama avila elzin eskeli evidina tatilla la ish mazet lisha visna ana ene sham usam Allah loma sati lika betule ele spiti parso hasila litne zikne hake la zikne hake aho ish questo odorancho odo ne akese la vi anaraki posicenda al la lo yet la isha lo falsha papo في أمل يحمل بعض ذلك يقولون أن أرى وسيلة أن أرى بيت أبي أكسر عن شيء يرى فأول ما مأتي أصلا لله بيسه لزلط لزلط بيت أبي أكبر أركان رامي بمفاتيح بسيش إن إشارة لا بعض بمدة شنهم إيش شتى إشارة بيتهم بأركان رامي سكي النهار نورس لإيش ما سيش بيم شعبنا وزيدنا إشنهم إشارة كير أو استخدم أطعم دارنا وما تبقى النهار عضو عشرة سنة بيم بيت إيش الدمار عشرة سنة إيش البيت بأركان في مسألة مثل إيش أنا مرسل بيرسي بعيش شعبي ما ومن إيش عشرة ما يبدو لنا لا أستطيع دماء إلنا خير موتي ما كيف من شيء لكن إيش أمر إيه برسول نفش كان الواحد زي كيف بس لما ساعة نرى ومرسل بإن مش يلا كيف زي إيش نرى بكل ما شاء الله أرسل تفسير مش حكيم يوسف بنتان إيش عشرة إيمان أبي نعرف مش كذا بلو يعني شاكا أشياء إن لو يفعلش هو ما لو يكا إيش إيش أبي لو يلا هو يعمل
That's hard to try. I'm getting no problem. I shared it to monitor to arrive and then the play alone. That's how we do. Or that's how we do 9 continue to arrive.
23 verses 1 through 7, he said, yeah.
So we do them today.
And at this end of the session. Okay. Yes.
Yahoo, Abram, Jesus. Parku at Adonai, the Barak. Parku Adonai, the Barak, the Lord, Paru, Acha, Adonai, the Lopin, Maryland, Allah, and share for her long, you be told, I will be. Bring out some long, you bet, or Joe, Paru, Acha, Adonai, no take on for.
לא איש אביב, לא יגלה, כנף אביב, לא יבוא בצדקה בברות שפחה בקו אדוני, לא יבוא במזר בקו אדוני, גם דור עשירי, לא יבוא בקו אדוני, לא יבוא עמוני מואבי בקו אדוני, גם דור עשירי, לא יבוא להם בקו אדוני, עד עולם, על דבר אשר לא קדמו אבותיכם בלחם ובמים ותלכם ממצרים, אשר זכה עליך את בית עמד באור מתור ארם נהריים, לקבלו אמר אדוני לך לשמוע אל בלעם, ויעקב אדוני לך את לברכה, כי אנך אדוני לך לא תדרוש למה טובתם תוירך לעולם.
Elohim knows Elohim, sharing the Elohim, Torah, and then they Elohim, the top between Baruch, Atah, Adonai, Hosea, and Torah.
On behalf of those who are ill, this, thank you. Mishabera, Alateno, Mohammed Santiago, son of Kanabelia. Alexander, Roger Richardson, Leva Batsara, Barbara Droto, Robert Droto, Hannah Batsara, Ronnie Duran, Israeli Sheva, Rachel Plalo, Eliab Bintana, Harriet Levins, Susan Herb Mormon, Wesley Ben Manya, Inga Bus, Rena Sebian, Barbara Mormon, Jan Deborah, Robin, Shoshana Batsara, Judy Alkalai, Rosalie Batrivka, Hannah Saleh, Batrachel, Richard Zeller, Jeffrey Buck, Alan Whalen, Judy Smith, Marvin Katz, Hannah Sarbat, Kelly Alta, Samuel Smith, Andrew Vasila, Abamasha Ben Sarah, Esther Gerson, Leah Dorf, Goose Jason, Arthur Vanatek, Mike Dorf, second friend of Judy Alkalai, Daniel Avidan, Mazda Larea, Yitzhak and Garola, Yafa Bat Sharifa, Marilyn Fried, Eli King, Vladimir Belaman, Eliza Batia Bat Miriam, all those affected by COVID or the other viruses going around. Wars, fires, storms, and injuries by ourselves in our own hands.
I would like to mention that someone who was part of my life in the TV set, Bob Barker. So he passed away off.
That was good for the cottage. So okay, remind me. Joe, next.
Sima Harvey, Ron there Harvey, couldn't find the Shayla Whitman, Esther Rachel Batsiva, Lady Moshe Batsara, Aaron Black, and
Keep on going to these. Julie Grimmon, Tara, Julie Parsons.
Let's see.
That's been
Natalie
Yahoo,
Nathan, Ben David,
David,
Ben
Maria Mendez, the Suez,
Riva Mendez, the Sue, and Sue.
Wendy
Journey, all who are ill, you have mentioned, the Americans, Baraku, you know, they're not coming, nothing can Rafadam, Ishmael, Mira, Pushliman, the Holy One, then healing both in body and in mind to them, to all who are ill in the house of Israel and all peoples, let us say, Amen. And we'll join our vision of prayers, let's join in together. I have the words here. We'll just try to do it from here. Okay, join it. Misha Mera, may the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Bishop Meron, evil table, make our heart let those in the dress the water, and the body, the whole spirit, and let us say Amen. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, going to the Mafia Aliyah. The Mafia Aliyah is the same one that we do in the Shabbat Services. It is a portion of on the lake. Remember what the Malay did to you? As you came out of Egypt, you were attacked and weak and the helpless. You had no fear of God. I have a photograph of my father dedicating a synagogue in Salzburg, Austria. Salzburg, a beautiful city with beautiful music of Mozart. Right? And there's warning on the in Hebrew of that picture where it says the Amalek. It's not what the Germans and all the henchmen did. Difference is that we do not wipe out the children's children. We're trying to remember though the danger of those who attack the helpless, the weak, and trying to eliminate those attackers, not necessarily by killing, but by changing it. So where are we?
אשר בחרנו מכל העמים ונתנו את תורתו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן הטוב אשר ככה בדרך, תגנב לך כל המתחרים אחריך, ואתה איה ויגיע, ולא ירא אלוהים. והיה אני אלוהיך לך, מכל אויביך מסביב בארץ. אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך נחלה לישא תמחה את ספר עמלק מתחת השמיים לא תשכח. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתננו את תורתו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נוסחה בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן העולם. אמן.
Any strong guys? And last 2 weeks ago, I made a mistake. Start reading, after reading last week, 2 weeks ago, I said it's short, so it's not. This one is. This is 9 sentences. Last week, this one was 12 sentences. This is the one that I like to teach the Bible students. And for less, I think you know it though. You're okay. So, all right, Dr. It's on the theme of constellation. Yeah, he's got it. Okay. It's on the theme of constellation. Promise. Good.
Rani Nakara, O Yarada, Ishina, Sahane, Lo Ala Kirabi, Beneshmana, Bene, Beula, Anna, Alheri, Kohole, Od Mishmatai, Yatu Asohi. Arifi Mitarai, Vetodai, Adeki, Yami Nusmol, Tifrosi, Bezahavoin, Milashali Neshamot, Yoshibu, Ati, Kilote Oshi, Veloti Karbi, Kilota Bikini, Ki Oshe, Almai. Ishkaki, Behekar, Al-Muntai, Lotishiri, Ki Barai, Usai, Kadonai, Shemo, Ubale, Kedosh, Israel, Elohe, Polare, Sukare, Ki Keisha, Zuba, Kasuvat, Bua, Noratera, Adonai, Deshenuri. Kima en amar Elohai Vedega Katon Azte Ura Hamid Gedolim Akavse Veshese Kese Vistati Anai Gamive Ura Veset Olam Rihanti Amar Olef Adonai Kibinu Achdo Li Asher Nishbatim Abod, Meo Abod, Al-Haaretz Ten, Nishbatim, Bifosed Nikesu, Alai, Umene Arba, Ki Behari Yamoshu, Hagevot, Bena, Chasti Meite, Lo Yamosh, Ubegesh Elohim, Lo Tzachot, Amar Adonai, not my soul, Gedosh, Israel, Baruch Adonai, Elohim Melech Haolam, Sul Kol Haolami, صدیق به قول درود قائل من ما به سه هم در مکین شکل به ورا می سه نمان ادونای نویمو نمانی دوره کار دواره کار دواره کار لو یاشور کام کی نمان رحمان آتا بارو ادونای آیل نمان بخور دوارا رفه مسیون تیدی به بگینو بلال بارو فتادنا مسمی اکسیون به بانه سمخینو ارونای روحینو به یابو هنابیا بفا مرکون به داری میشتر داری یابو به یاگری بینو هر کسول و اشارزار دو یشیزدار به نوعی حال بود خرید انتودو جیب شکل شفا میشبت سالو جلوی فنرون دکتان قائل بارو فتادنا آگنه راوی ارهتورا داردا برنبی لایم شفاط ازه شناست الله از خانهی دیک نشاد نیفا بخواد لطفانه ارهتورا ارهتورا مبارکی خدا ایدوارش پاکسی کول تای کمی دوران باید بارو فتادنای میکرده
Need a volunteer for the prayer for our country on page 415. Come up front. I'll hold the mic for you. So Marjorie, come up next to me here. Okay. Yeah. Okay, now let's and right about here. That's good. Go ahead and read for us. Go ahead.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leader and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights of your Torah, that they may minister all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish all hatred and bigotry, and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions which are the pride and glory of our country. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, and helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say,
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Yeah.
I wanted to mention, in my life, I had so many problems, when I have.
Just let everybody know. You know what? Hold on. There we go. Just anybody who's following, just to know that we have real people here this Shabbos morning. That's it. Go ahead.
Well, I used to have so many problems, with social training when I had to use the restroom. And this week, I found something really interesting that helped me tremendously. And it was like, I found it on a YouTube video. Well, they say human beings are their anatomy is, if they squat, it's much better for them. And I did it this whole week, and it's been tremendous improvement.
Okay. Let me get us back in the chapel.
Use like a footstool.
Okay, which is why somebody asked me last week. We have a prayer for being able to do something routine like that, which is Asher Yatzah, has made the body openings and closings. What is open should be open, what's closed should be closed. When you get it mixed up, then we're in trouble. Thank God that what's open stays open. When it's supposed to be open, what's closed is closed, when it's supposed to be closed. Mafli lasot, miracles of the body, thank God. But yeah, two hands, yeah, okay, Maury.
When you take a good Torah after you read the Torah, and the guy brings it over and sits down, when do we sit down?
When he sits down, you should sit down, yeah. When you sit down.
Make sure they eat it, though, they don't.
Oh, they can sit down. They can sit down. Somebody wants to stand, they can stand, but it's when you sit down. The Torah's down, you're down. Yeah. Hey, Barbara.
Saying what he was saying. Isn't it true? Well, I don't say it, but we're supposed to say a prayer when everything works out correctly.
That's yeah, Asher Yatzar, yeah. That's it. For when the body works, because when the body doesn't work, we know it. We feel it.
You gotta move it.
That's when it's fixed afterwards.
If I
Yeah.
did this years ago, my life would have been much
Okay.
better.
Okay. Thank God. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to move on with our service. Move on with our service. Our Enke Eloheinu. No, sorry, prayer for Israel. Prayer for Israel. Let me pull it up here on the screen for a second. I have it here somewhere. Okay, let's see. I had it somewhere here. In a second for us. There we go. I have it up here. Let's join in. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. So Yisrael Begalo. Barechet Medinat Yisrael. Reshit Smicha Gulatenu. Hagen Hagen Aleha. Bevrat Chasdecha. Ufros Aleha. Sukat Shlomecha. Shlachacha Vamitcha. Noshas Arav Yatzah. Takdim Beitzah Tova Milfanecha. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Avinu Sheba Shamayim. Deliver them and crown their efforts with triumph. Avinu Sheba Shamayim. So Yisrael Begalo. Bless our land with peace, O God. Its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. Avinu Sheba Shamayim. So Yisrael Begalo. Barechet Medinat Yisrael. Reshit Smicha Gulatenu. Again, Aleha, Bevrat Chazdecha, Ufros Aleha, Sukat Shlomecha, Benoma Amen, Benoma Amen. Oh, okay. Simon has joined us. Okay, and I hope that you are feeling better. And you throw our thoughts from the Shabbat list. And we're going to return the Torah. Good. Okay. Be well. That's it. We're going to find this. Yeah, we go. That's it. Gotcha. Okay. That's it. Got that. And Simon, be well. Okay. So let's go ahead. Page 422. 422. We return the Torah to the Ark. I need somebody to carry the Torah. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kineskav, Shemo Levado, O Lo Eretz Shamayim, Vayaharem Keren Le'amo, Tehila Lecho Chasidav, Livnei Yisrael Am Kerovo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Abul Adonai b'nei Elim, Abul Adonai kavodos, Kavul Adonai Kavod Shemo, Ishtachavul Adonai Behadat Kodesh, Mayim HaKavodim, Aronai Mayim Rabim, Kol Adonai Ba'akoch, Kol Adonai Be'adar, Kol Adonai Shaver Arazim, Vashaber Adonai Et Hazeh Havonom, Yakirem Koegva V'Siryon Kevo Ben Reimim, Kol Adonai Chotzev Lavotesh, Kol Adonai Yachim Midbar, Yachil Adonai Mibakadesh, Kol Adonai Cholel Ayalot, Sofiar Echol Kolo Mekavod, Adonai Lamavon Yashav, Vayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Oz Amo Yitzed, Adonai Varech Et Amo Vashalom. Page 426 of the famous It's Chaimi, Lama Chazikim Ba Betom Peha, Meushar, Deracheha, Dacheino, Bechol Netivoteha, Shalom, Ashiveinu Adonai, Elecha V'Nashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu, and we continue, please be seated. We continue. With, oh, happened to him? Here we go. What happened to my, okay. And Kelohenu. There we go. Robots. There we go, Cantor Mendelssohn.
Hey, 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 nay, 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 que lo que, en Catoneno, en que Malqueno, en que Mochieno, ni, que lo que, ni Catoneno, ni que Malqueno, ni que Mochieno. En que Malqueno, en que Mochieno, ni que lo que, ni Catoneno, ni que Malqueno, ni que Mochieno. Ein, 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 en que Elokeinu, en que Adonenu, en que Malkeinu, en que Moshienu, mi, que Elokeinu, mi que Adonenu, mi que Malkeinu, mi que Moshienu.
Okay, now let's go ahead. Make sure 1 second that I didn't leave him on by mistake. 1 second, excuse me. Okay, leave it. Okay. So it doesn't come on all of a sudden. Yeah, it's gone. I'm back. There we go. I'm back. Okay. There we go. Done. Page 510. Aleinu. To open. Let's just rise. Aleinu l'shabach ladon hakol. No tekru laliot seir breshit. Shelo sanikar yeharatzot. Velo samanu k'mishpachot adama. Shelo sam chelkeinu kahem. Vigor aleinu kechol hamonam. Vanachnu orim u'mishtahabim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz Moshe mikarav v'shamayim mimal u'shchinatu zo v'gabei meromim Eloheinu einod Ememakenu ebezulato kakado betarato Yadata yom ashivota elevavecha Ki Adonai hu Elohim Bashamayim imal V'alaretz mitachat einod V'ne'emar Haya Adonai Lemelech al-kol haaretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad U'shemo echad Yeah. Maybe seated. Remember the loved ones who passed away this year. You mentioned Bob Barker passed away, TV personality. And we recall those members of our congregation who passed away in this year. Erna Nissan Edgush, Sivi Gush, Michael Sherman, Chaner Melamed, Elaine Goldsmith, Manli Ben Shaul, Daftal Ben Avram, Tzvi V'Simei Cheved, and Herb Lieberman. And the yahrzeits of those lost away at this time in previous years, Noam Davidov and Michael Yaakov Lev. I'd like to mention this Wednesday, we did a memorial service for our dear friend Michael Sherman. I want to thank Carmen for really scrambling to put everything together. And people stayed afterwards, the Sudat Havra'ah, meal of comfort in his honor and memory. And A lot of work. Also, Carmen, you had a lot of work here to get this set up today. Also, we had the rain damage. You had to scramble to get everything set up here in the lobby, all the equipment and so on. So I'm going to call it kavod. Let us now think of those.
Done Wednesday.
No, it was Wednesday afternoon, past, finished. You were out of town. They couldn't be here. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be another memorial for him.
Oh,
At
Plummer Park? If you can let me know, I can let people know. I heard that there would be something. Yeah, very nice. Because he performed at Plum Park. That's very good. So for all of these, let us all say Kaddish. We have Michael Sherman in our minds. Yitkadal, v'yitkadash shemei rabba, v'amad yivrach yirutei, v'yamlich malkutei, chayechon v'yamechon, v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agalal v'zman kariv imru amen, yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'olam l'omer maya, Yibarach v'ishtabach v'po'ar v'trumam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kutsha berichu le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata damiram b'yama v'imru amen yehi shlomo rabba min shemaya b'chayim aleinu v'akoyse v'imru amen ose shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'akoyse v'imru amen. And we're going to wrap up with Adon Olam, and then I have, let's see what Adon Olam I have for us now. I don't have, wait a minute, we will have in a second. And we'll join in here. Nice, clean, simple, it's a static French version with the words on the screen for us. And we can sing along. אשר מלך בטרם כה יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימוך נורא והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יחיה בתפארה והוא יהיה בתפארה והוא אחד ואין שני להמשילו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצור חבלי בצרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום אקרא מנת כוסי ביום אקרא בידו אבקיד רוחי בעת ששן בעלייה ואם רוחי יביעתי אדוני לי ולא אירא אדוני לי ולא אירא. Okay. Okay. So now a few words of Torah study, and then we'll call it. I've been going on this series of having us understand how Jewish law develops. We saw in the Torah reading, the question: a child is rebellious and doesn't listen to father and mother. And well, what did we do about it? And we said, well, it's a law that was never enacted, was never intended to be enacted. It was only written there just to scare the kid. Right? That's the kind of thing the rabbis did with Jewish law. They basically enacted the power of interpretation. That is what distinguished Judaism from the Sadduceans, from the Samaritans, from even the Karaites within the Jewish community, who wanted to go back to the original text and not rely on a tradition of interpretation or method. But we are the product of the Rabbanites, the Perushim, those who seceded from what was the normative society of its day, the beginnings of the middle of the Second Temple period, and then became, instead of the separatists, became the dominant force, especially when the temple was destroyed and the Sadducees, the party of the priests, had no base. So it's a long presentation. I'm going to try to cut it short to the point, because we got to it because of the question of why are we using electronic equipment? On what basis? Because Shabbos, you don't light a match, you're not supposed to use fire. Is it? Is it not? Right? And it's a mute point, since we've been using microphones for, it must be near 100 years in synagogues, in conservative synagogues certainly, and even in some Orthodox synagogues where the system is turned on in advance, it's been used, but nobody's supposed to know that. But it's a long story. It was in South Africa, and they got a permit from the rabbinate in Israel that would not allow it in Israel itself. So, but to my point, yeah.
Yeah, God didn't say you can't use a microphone or you can't use electronics. That was man's law, rabbi's law, right?
What did God actually tell us? Oh, we have a big problem. So that's what I'm going to get to exactly. So we have a problem with Shabbat. What's the problem with Shabbat? The Mishnah already discusses it. It says, Heta Nedarim, we have this practice of absolving oaths. Porchim ba'avir, float around in the air. It's like a law that has no basis at all. No basis. God didn't tell us anything about that. We have laws. Hilchot Shabbat, Chagigot v'Meilot. The laws about Shabbat and Chagigot, the festival offerings and the abuse of sacred property. We have Hararim, Tlim B'Sa'ara. We have lots of laws hanging from one hair. I mean, the biblical base is very, very thin on all of these. Finally, Hadinim Avodot Vatarot, when it comes to civil and criminal law and the temple worship and ritual purity, now we have a lot of biblical laws and we have a lot of practical laws. And Gufei Torah. So that's really the core of the Torah, because there we know what we're talking about. So really it is a problem. It is a problem because the first chapter of the creation, Bereshit, says on the seventh day God rested, and the Ten Commandments makes a big deal of it. So it's very important. But what are we supposed to do about it? Well, we do have the prohibition of gathering manna. That's number one. Number two, leaving one's home on the Shabbat and baking. That's in right there before the Ten Commandments, as soon as they get out of Egypt. We've got this generic rule of rest in the Ten Commandments and a rule about lo tavaru eish, you shouldn't have fire. Doesn't mean not have fire, light a fire or have a fire going, it doesn't explain. We have the words milacha, which says labor for what you're not supposed to do on holidays, and kol milacha, all kinds of labor on Shabbat. There's a distinction. Yeah. No instructions. It's done. So we do have another, that's it. We do have a story of a man who gathers kindling wood on Shabbat. But we're not told if he's violating Shabbat because he's just picking up sticks from the ground or because he's actually cutting up and chopping up trees to do it. We're not told. And we do have a vague reference. Isaiah talks about, don't talk about business, or chase after business, call Shabbat a delight. Isaiah. Jeremiah talks about not moving objects around. There is a description of riding to the prophet Elisha as a common custom on Shabbat, riding on a mule, which would be against Jewish law. And now, so our sages are very disturbed by this. What does it mean then to rest? What does work mean? What does fire mean? Why do we have a different word for work on Shabbat than on a festival? Yeah.
The distinction between riding on the mule, which you're not giving the animal a chance.
You're right.
And riding in the vehicle, that is not.
Wait, the vehicle is not in the Ten Commandments, but the mule is in the Ten Commandments. Right. And she's riding on the mule. Well, she's not. She's going to the husband says, but it's not a holiday, and it's not a Shabbat. It's not a Rosh Chodesh. It's not a Shabbat. You're used to going to it. So, obviously, it's undefined. Now we have to define things. We don't like generalizations. The word rest, I don't like just general rest. I want to know, what does it mean? So what do the rabbis do? We look for hints in the Torah, And where do we get our hints? We took the hints from the description of the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Because every time that we have instructions about building Mishkan, it reminds us on Shabbat, don't do this. 3 times, I think it is, 3 times. Here's what you do, don't do this on Shabbat. You do these, don't do it on Shabbat. So we can generalize. So what do they do in the product? So they derive from this what they call the avot melacha, principal categories of labor, which are 40 chaser achat, 40 minus 1, which adds up to math 39, right? Like the Latin number 9 is 1, the 10, the one before the 10, right? 40 minus 1. So what are they? Right? So we started going through all the different things that would be necessary to make the temple go on. So, for example, agriculture, because you have first fruits. So, well, what do you need for agriculture to do it? Sows, plows, reaps, gatherers, up to the final product, which is baking. Then there's clothing. Right? They have garments. Well, then from the shearing of the wool to the whitening of it, the weaving of it, stitching, tearing, but not tearing to destroy, but tearing in order to complete a hem. Difference between the two. And then writing instructions. So writing begins with leather. So you start with the first act of leather, trapping the deer, slaughtering it, flaying it, smoothing it, salting the leather, and so on, down to writing 2 letters and erasing in order to write. If you just erase, it's not the same as erasing because you're clearing space for new writing. And if you write 1 letter, it's only it needs 2 letters. What's a letter also? Now, then we go to manufacture, the structure, construction. So one who builds a structure, dismantles it, extinguishes a fire, kindles a fire, because all that's necessary, a hammer and so on. And then finally, transportation, because that's central to commerce. So you carry from one domain to the next domain. All these are the primary categories of labor. So that's how the rabbis come out. They have a system. Now we have a system. Good. Then we break it down. Subcategories, we're happy. What's the underlying principle? Now we need an underlying principle. Why did we pick these? Anyone who performs labor, and that labor is stable, is self-sustaining, or maintains itself, or continues afterwards, permanent structure, permanent action, is liable. If it's a temporary object that would disappear, fall apart by itself, not liable. Right? So if you tie a slip knot, you can get away with it because it's not permanent. But if you tie one of these sailor's knots that never opens up, then that's liable, right? Permanent versus temporary. Reversible versus irreversible. That's very important. That's the underlying principle. Now, what is behind this is that God is the one who creates that which is permanent, the universe. We're supposed to rest like God. That's the whole principle. Tselem Elohim. So we are refraining from changing the permanent world. We can enjoy the products of the permanent world that are prepared in advance. We refrain from changing a physical change. So we find then that things that would normally be prohibited, if they're not permanent, can be used. For example, famous case of Rabbi Yisrael of Salant, the father of the Musar movement, extremely devout Jew, was rabbi of the harbor city it's the German city, Memel, I can't remember. And the Jews ran the harbor, and ships came in and out on Shabbat. They had to come in and out. They had to be unloaded. You have to have track of what's being loaded and unloaded. So you authorized the use of the pegboard to track the cargo. The harbor could operate, the Jews could remain in the positions, and here was a solution based on temporary, not permanent marking. Notice these Jews are working on Shabbat, but they're not working because they're not doing something which is an act of creative, physical creation. Temporary, therefore disappearing. In Israel, doctors on Shabbat, when they're visiting non-critical patients, not talking about life and death, non-critical, would write their notes with disappearing ink. I think they still do it. They have special pens for it. Then after Shabbat, they would be transcribed before the notes would disappear. It's not new. It's not new. Actually, the mission already describes that writing with disappearing ink is not itself a violation. All right, so we know, they know. Now,
What was reading the disappearing ink with the under some point?
So what they did is this. Well, the holiday disappearing ink should disappear. Yeah, you don't want it to stay. You want it to disappear. That's it. Like lemon. I think that's the example when you heat it. Yeah, so the disappearing ink, it's supposed to just corrode, vanish, whatever. Huh?
The string has deteriorated and it doesn't secure.
Well, there's a deterioration, then it's not, you no longer have any written. You can't read it, you can't read it. Yeah. We don't deal with things that are beyond the normal, right? You know, it has to be visible to normal eye. It's very important. Yeah.
I would ask, what disappearing if it do? Some disappearing doesn't work after a while.
Yeah.
Doesn't disappear.
So check who you buy it from. Yeah, no, so there's, I know they use certain links for this. So anyway, but, huh? No, because it's temporary. The whole important thing is we're not making a permanent change in the world. So now where can we do to make it work? Now, to add this, we add to this another concept, which is an overriding concept of shvut, which is they may not be work, but it feels like work. It looks like work. And so we want to avoid things. For example, we're told that your non-Jewish servant, you may not give orders to your non-Jewish servant, but what about somebody who's not a servant? Next door neighbor. So as an extension of it, there's the rule of shvut, you shouldn't tell it to him either. All right? Of course, we solve it. You'll ask whatever. And now we just create a prohibition, we solve it. So, but there are some very interesting ideas that are added to Shabbat rules I'm going to add, which actually have a beautiful implication. The idea of muktzeh, for example, which is that if I have a hammer, I'm not supposed to hammer with it on Shabbat. Now, in and of itself, I don't have a prohibition about touching a hammer, but if I have the hammer in my hand, what am I going to do with it? Find a nail and hammer it. So to avoid it, I just don't touch it. It's muktzeh. Then there is some category interesting. Muktzeh machmat chisron kis. It's muktzeh, which means cut. It's set aside because you lose money. Machmat chisron kis. Your pocket gets empty. For example, I'm invited to a Greek wedding on Shabbat. I walk over. There's a Greek wedding, and they're dancing. I'm not doing anything, but they're all smashing plates. I have my place. I smash a plate. During the week, it's fine to smash a plate. On Shabbat, no, because you're wasting money. Machmat chisron kis. You're not allowed to essentially destroy property on Shabbat. During the week, you have to destroy something, you destroy it, not on Shabbat. Then, here's a beautiful one, actually. Muktzeh machmat mius. You don't touch it because it's disgusting. For example, on Shabbat, we should not deal with disgusting things. So if I have a pile of dirt properly, you have dirt on the table after dinner, it's all dirty, it's not disgusting. You wrap it up in the cloth. You don't handle it yourself. You wrap it up in the cloth and then dump it. So you're not handling it yourself. We want to keep away from the disgust. That's part of the atmosphere of Shabbat. So lovely concept. So we always have workarounds, right? We're trying to, how can we make it work? How can we make it work? You know, and maybe you say it's too much of a rabbinic head because you're always looking for workarounds. I create something to forbid it, then I work around to permit it. Then I find a reason to forbid what I just permitted, and it's Jewish head. We have the idea, as I said, to tell a Gentile to do something. Well, if he's my servant, I can't tell him directly. If he's a neighbor, I can't tell him directly. That's under shvut. But if I contracted in advance to do something, well, that person is a free agent. A contractor is considered a free agent. Can do and not do. Or always quit and not quit. So if I have it contracted in advance, that's okay. He's just doing what he wants to do. In tandem is the idea of, yeah. So employees of a temple, theoretically, that's a workaround. Or theoretically, they're not doing things that they're not supposed to do. Or theoretically, I'm not telling them. I told them in advance what I expect them to do. And that's the workaround. Or there was the common custom with the Shabbos goy shel Shabbat, and where you hint to the neighbor what you want. Like Elvis Presley was the Shabbos goy for a Jewish family next door, and he would play these cantorial records on Shabbat. They would listen, they would hear it and enjoy it, and he did other things at home, and that's how he learned a lot of the stuff in his music. In Israel till today, in religious neighborhoods, very Orthodox neighborhoods, you see a car with a sign goy shel Shabbat, and it would be an Arab, Muslim, or Christian from the neighboring community who would be there on call, and he would be available for household emergencies like a broken toilet, and he would get paid by the community would set up some kind of contract with him. This idea, by the way, of goy shel Shabbat, a major historian wrote an entire thesis on this about how it was very beneficial for both Jews and Christians. Because what they did was the two sides, when they weren't fighting, supported each other. You know, the things the Jews did, finances, that made possible the economy, the things that the Gentile did for the Jew, like work on Shabbat, that benefited the Jewish community. So everybody benefited from it. So what about Jewish businesses? You have a Jewish business, it's not supposed to, it's your business, it's your name is on it. You're not supposed to operate on Shabbat, but you have a business that must keep on working, whatever it is. You create a partnership with a non-Jew. And the non-Jew theoretically is responsible for the business on Shabbat, and you create some kind of partnership arrangement, right? Now it's not yours on Shabbat, it's his, and it still goes on. Another voice, always, I create something difficult and then I find a workaround. Right? How do I make it work? So you do something b'shinui, with a change. So I made a joke last week. You saw me push the light button with my elbow instead of finger. So it's a joke in my rabbinical school. We had Orthodox and non-Orthodox faculty, less Orthodox faculty. And one of my professors, very traditional, is standing and he sees, and he's waiting just for the elevator to go up and down. If the elevator goes up and down by itself, you can go in, no problem. But then one of the faculty comes and pushes the elevator button, for everybody watching, with his finger on the button. And he looks at it. Shabbos, I like it. He says, don't worry. During the week, I use my elbow. Shinui, right? Okay, different. So, another workaround, actually it's a very beautiful workaround. When the rabbis had to solve this conundrum about the Bible says you shall not go out of your habitations. And then they come to the question, what is a habitation? Is it my house? Is it in the next door house? Is it my neighborhood? What's a habitation? Among the Karaites or the Sadducees, habitation was the house, maybe the immediate courtyard, and that would be it. What the rabbis did was expand it from there and say, well, whatever is communal is my house also. We developed the idea of an eruv. An eruv is that which binds us together. So that what is Reshut Yachid, that was my private property, that becomes Reshut Rabim. It's collective property. And so habitation would then be interpreted to mean, in terms of walking, I can walk anywhere outside of my house. I don't have to, right? Some of the Jews, the more literal, the Sadducees and the Karaites, stayed inside the house, or at least within the gated community, did not walk outside. We walk outside and we walk a distance, certain distance. So where is the furthest of your community? From that place on, you mark Tchum Shabbat, 2,000 cubits. It's like about half a mile, something like that. And if you set up an event, you can go double the distance. So that's for walking, yeah. So now, the other problem was about carrying objects, because they said, well, don't go out of your habitations. We're not going to carry outside your habitations. So essentially, you would not carry more than just like from here to here. But what happens if inside my house, I can lift up my sofa, weighs a ton, I can move it inside my house. But I can't take a feather and take it beyond the front gate, let's say. But what happens, if we have a gated community, most houses in the Middle East are built around the courtyard, common court, all that is one community. How can I expand that community? Well, then we just extend that gate. And our gate doesn't have to be stone. We've extended that gate or that wall now by anything that can connect. So in Warsaw, the Jews of Warsaw convinced the telephone company to make sure that all the telephone lines around the city made a complete circle. And boom, there's an eruv. Here in Los Angeles, we have a huge eruv. It goes from down south of Pico, western, all the way to the west side and up to Mulholland. Then there's another eruv which goes in Sherman Oaks and Studio City, and there's some, several. So, and there's certain rules about going from one eruv to the other, but it makes it possible to go to your neighbor without thinking about it. And in Israel, it's no problem because every city in Israel officially has an eruv also. Yeah.
The error, when it's working, sometimes it's dead.
They'll get a notice, yeah.
Does that give you permission to carry money?
Money is muktzah because you're not supposed to use it. You only carry things that you want for Shabbat. Something that's not,
Carry your child.
yeah, you carry your kid, you carry the food because you're going to have dinner together, right? The keys, yeah. That's it. That's right. Yeah, that's very cool. Right. Huh? Right. So now,
So what is with Arabs, like, there's an Arab, at least one around the Lower East Side of New York, but I'm with my Orthodox friends, and I say, oh, I took my people with me.
Yeah.
Next time you go back to the temple, you're in the Arab residence, in the temple. Could you bring us back? They go, we don't recognize any of the Arabs.
then,
The Arabs can sit.
so they're really from. Now, I don't know what happens to the status of men.
They're not. She's
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Manhattan, because it's an island. I've checked the certain rules about islands. What may be involved in that?
Does everybody really part of your family? Do you have permission from everybody in the area? They believe that I think you need permission from everybody in the area.
Consent, mutual consent.
More than consent, something about they have to sell their property has to be sold to the collective temporarily.
No, I never saw anything like that. There are certain rules about Erev in other situations where you do something for yourself and you do it to benefit other people as long as there's no loss. So that is true, for example, Erev Tafshir, you're not supposed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat, but if you set the one piece of food or two pieces of food before, and you say that's for this Erev, I'm combining Shabbat with Yom Tov, when I do it for myself, I can do it for everybody else that I'm thinking of. And I can do things that benefit the public without telling them. Combination. A combination, right? Bringing together. Huh? Hebrew, yeah, Eruv. Yeah. So the concept itself is a very beautiful concept. We're sharing, a beautiful concept. So when we intentionally are sharing. Now, the question of fire.
Is it a combination of something collective or actually land?
Well, Erev means any kind of binding or mixing. For example, the word for evening, Erev, meaning because we are between combining day and night, Erev, which gives us then Ma'ariv west, because west is where the sun sets and the day and the night are meeting, right? So it's all this combination. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, all Jews are bound up with each other. Right, a shared fate. Yeah.
Is that why one of the top Israeli newspapers over the last several decades is called Ma'ariv?
Ma'ariv.
It's
because it's the evening paper.
Okay.
So I'm going to assume it was printed in the evening. I always had a morning paper and an evening paper in every city. So I assume. It's a good question. So.
Non-Jews inside Europe?
Oh, anybody else doesn't matter.
Oh, they don't.
Because they're not forbidden, they're not permitted, and not my business. Non-Jew, I have no authority of any kind over a non-Jew, in any activity, in any behavior.
And so you walk into there.
If he invites me, if I have to break down the house and he shoots me because I'm an unwanted visitor, that's my problem. All right? Yeah.
The kid that was mostly Jewish.
Yeah. Yeah, inside the same building. Yeah, it's inside the same building. There's no problem. The walls of the building are your collective Arab. Right? That's it. Yeah. Okay. Now, fire. Fire is a big problem, right? It says lo tivaru eish, because that's what takes the electricity, and then we'll wrap up. Lo tivaru eish b'chol moshvatechem. It says you should not light a fire, or you should not have a fire in all your dwelling places, b'yom Shabbat. The word ba'ar, bet ayin reish, fire, is it a active or is it intensive, causative? Good question, right? If it's active, you shall not lie, you shall not light it. Lo tivaru eish, causative, you should not create a situation where the fire is going on. Well, so the Tzaddukim, the Sadducees, party of the high priest, and also the landed nobility, said there should be no fire burning. And it was continued later by Karaites, as neither party accepted the tradition of the methods of the Pharisees, the rabbis. So you could have warm food by burying it in the sand because you're on the coast, for example, where the rich people lived, and the warm ground kept heat and had hot food even in the winter. Or you might have dead coal, so the coal is no longer burning what you had in the ground. And that's the origin of what we call chamin in the Hebrew. Sephardic Jews use the word chamin. Ashkenazic Jews, cholent, from the French or Latin roots, chaud, hot, lent, slowly, cholent. Right? Dark is dark, right? Now, Karaites also have a little workaround about darkness, but they generally also don't use any kind of lighting except for a little they use a little emergency light. Just it's a little glow. They're very careful about it. I was looking, yeah.
Get around the fire, they have a black.
Okay, so the blech is, the blech prevents actual cooking. That's its intention. So the fire is on, right? So the rabbis revolutionized the text and they said, it's not the existence of the fire, it's creating the fire. In creating the fire, I'm creating something new. I'm changing what's around me. And then it would apply not only to Shabbat, but also to the festivals. So you could have a fire then on the festivals. And on the festivals, you could go even a step further. You could light one fire from the next. On the festival on Shabbat, you don't extend the fire. That's okay. And so there's a principle for Shabbat or for festivals called Tzorech Orcha Nefesh, that once I'm allowed to light a fire, and you have a pre-existing fire for cooking, I may also take my cigarette and light it from that same fire and have it towed. Which is why on Yom Tov Jews would smoke, and on Shabbat they wouldn't. You know, watch Orthodox communities, right? Okay. Okay. Well, a very interesting question. Why do the rabbis not prohibit smoking? Because sakanta chamira me'isura, a danger to life is more prohibited than a prohibition. You smoke long enough, you'll find out. That's it. That's it. The smoking a cigarette, that's it.
A lack of being able to smoke endangers the life.
No. It's the smoking is endangering your life. So that if you continue smoking, you're endangering yourself. You shouldn't do it. But Orthodox rabbis didn't say that. And the reason they didn't say it is it's not written explicitly in the Torah, and you don't tell somebody something you know that they're going to violate anyway. So I'd rather not tell you. Yeah. I'd rather not tell you because I know you're going to. What?
When she said something about the fact you can't choose which rules you follow, you either follow or you don't.
Yeah. Okay, but you always find a reason. You always, there's also some subjectivity in this. Okay. Now what the rabbis do is something else very special. No longer is lighting the fire just something I'm allowed to do. It is now a mitzvah. And we have a blessing, Ladlik Ner Shel Shabbat. And who says that? Generally, right? Who says that? Ladlik Ner Shel Shabbat. The woman. In other words, this violation of what would seem to be a biblical principle is now turned into a commandment, as if it had the status of a commandment from God, like any other biblical commandment. And the woman is the one who has the special privilege of doing that. Now, if there's no woman available, the man does it. But you see, that's something special and given to the woman, right? That's the hearth. The woman is commander of the hearth. It's actually very ancient. Yeah. As I said about the cigarettes. Here we go. Okay, now we get to electricity, because now I'll just do this very quickly. Electricity, especially in a regular incandescent bulb, tungsten bulb or whatever you have it looks bright like a fire, is hot like a fire, and the wires can cause sparks. So is that fire? So the first reactions indeed were, when electricity became widely used, was to label it as fire. And the idea, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. Or not. So a lot of the rabbis in my Orthodox rabbis began to take a look and say, you know what? It's true the old filament bulb does give off tremendous heat. So that may be one of the categories of fire. But going back already 60, 70 years ago, famous authority, Rabbi Shlomo Goren, became chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, later chief rabbi of the army, later chief rabbi of the state of Israel. The one that you see in the pictures blowing the shofar at the Kotel, that's Rabbi Goren. Wrote an extensive article that electricity does not meet the conditions of fire. He wasn't ready to say you can go and use it, but he says it's not fire very clearly. Now, he was chosen chief rabbi because the state thought that he would be very a force in modernizing rabbinic laws, but the Haredim, the Hasidic communities, and the ultra-Orthodox got hold of him, gave him a mental whipping, and so he backed down from a lot of his positions. But that's a whole story by itself. So, but a lot of halachic authorities recognize that fire is not the problem. So they come up with different problems. Maybe it's molid, which is creating something new. You have a current. So the current that you've created is something new. It's not this fire, but you're making something. Or bonnet. We have, well, there wasn't a circuit before, just wires. Now you've closed it. That's like creating a house. Or makeh batish. It's similar to you're finalizing the work by flicking the switch. They're very, very difficult arguments, and a lot of the rabbis recognize indeed that electricity does not meet the categories of fire because an electron is not a thing. Electric circuit is not a thing.
But electricity can lead to a fire.
Well, that's lighting a fire. That's a different story.
Well, not
Look, I have two stones. If I hit them together, I can make a fire too, right? If I don't hit them together, I don't make a fire, right? It can't forbid on an if. That's not sufficient. It can watch out. One category of electricity that's close to rabbinic prohibition would be use of intentional heat, like an electric stove or microwave, to actually cook. Cooking, we say no, because cooking makes a physical change in the meat, in the vegetables. An actual physical change. Molecules break down, you have different chemicals. In your stomach. You hide the evidence. You hide the evidence. All right. So a lot of the arguments about the incandescent bulb disappear with LEDs. There's almost no heat given off of the LED. Yeah.
What if it's bigger for?
Yeah.
You put it on an electric,
Platter, warmer, yeah.
warmer or
Yeah.
something like that. Does that, what is that?
So warming, if you're really meticulous, you should leave it overnight on the warming platter. Yeah, well, that's what Trinity is. Yeah, but what you do is you do want to make sure if you put it on the warmer that it's not more. I think the idea is it should not go over 110 degrees. That's where it won't burn your skin. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
You need to put all the food next to the pilot light at night for breakfast.
And then it would stay warm by itself. Yeah, yeah. So if it's continuing cooking, if you have food that you prepared before Shabbat, it's not cooked, and you put it before Shabbat on the hot plate, and in the morning it's cooked, that's okay. That's cholent. That's the concept of cholent. You are not doing the cooking. You're just setting in motion all the process. All right? So you have not done it directly. It's going on by itself. Right? So by the way, there were rabbis in North Africa that permitted the use of electric lights at the beginning of the last century. Yeah, they actually were. So what I'm getting at is there are workarounds. For example, use of batteries rather than AC/DC current. By the way, AC/DC current, but it's the AC, alternating current, solved the problem of a circuit because it's there and it's not there. Also. Yeah, so it's there and not there. There are all sorts of workarounds. There are light bulb switches that turn the light on after an undetermined delay. Turn it off after an undetermined delay. Motion detection for a lot of Orthodox Jews becomes a problem. Now, do you walk through or not? Electric sinks in a bathroom, public bathroom, right? So, and others say, well, look, this is unintended work, and unintended work is not the same thing as intentional work. There's a whole category by that. But
Is work supposed to be, the definition of, I mean, I would like to ask, especially about the definition.
no, so I'm saying if electricity is electricity, then it becomes right. If it's not, yeah.
Regarding the definition of work, there's labor.
Yeah.
Where one gets paid for labor. As opposed to where one is doing the activity, that is considered work, but that's not labor.
That's a different, we're confusing two issues. We're confusing work for pay with the word melacha.
Right,
Melacha has to do only with physics,
okay,
only with physics and chemistry, only physics and chemistry. Have I changed the composition of something? Have I not? That's melacha. Do I get paid or not paid? It's a whole different category. That comes, it is a whole different issue. Is it contracted in advance? Is it contracted now? How do we do it? Under what conditions? Can I make a contract? Do I make a contract on Shabbat? Not make a contract on Shabbat? Those are different areas. Different area. Do we have to separate the two? Have to separate the two. Yeah. So. Yeah, that's it. So you cover, right? That's an easy solution. You could cover. Yeah, but you didn't change anything. Obviously, so with LEDs, it's easier because on incandescent bulbs, they get hot inside. With the LEDs, you can buy now a little bulb. Looks like a regular LED bulb. It has a tiny switch. What it does is there's a cover inside the bulb, covers the light, and that's it. Okay, so electricity, travel on Shabbat, electric vehicles like go-karts on Shabbat are permitted for elderly, for infirm in Israel by the Orthodox rabbin, and my father-in-law had one. The idea is that it's on before Shabbat on an extremely low voltage, and you're merely raising and lowering the voltage. But if it were fire, you can't raise and lower the voltage, because like a fire, you're not allowed to increase the fire or decrease the fire. If you have a gas stove, you're not supposed to change the setting. You're not supposed to. So this is then in this case, then it cannot be like fire, and that's why they can give the permission. So I'll just go ahead. The question comes up then in conservative circles, and still debates. And the food is getting cold. Still debating about is electronic recording in a different category, because now we're recording something again. Does it exist as permanent? Does it exist as temporary? Are we using equipment? Not using it? Should we be setting up the equipment? All sorts of issues involved. But more and more, I see in conservative congregations, especially since the pandemic, live streaming, broadcasting, and basically boiling down to the camera and the microphone, essentially the same problem. If we have the microphone, the camera is merely one step removed from that. I'll say this: we authorized in 1950 the use of the car for going to the synagogue. And if there's anything that is involving fire, definitely it is the car, because the car is an internal combustion engine, right? You're lighting something. We came out and I saw the tshuvot. There's a question: was it intentional? Do you want the fire? You want the engine? Do you want the power, or is it the fire? What are you looking for in this? Is this internal? Does it count? And so on. And basically, what they were doing was trying to justify the fact that Jews were driving, and they'd rather have Jews driving with permission than with prohibition. And that was the actual factor. So a lot of things in here, a lot of more difficult issues. We deal with, the Orthodox communities deal with even more difficult issues: human sexuality, life and death. Now we're going to hit artificial intelligence. Can I count in for the minion? We're going to find very difficult issues coming up. The electricity will be the smallest of them. Okay, so with that, I'll turn off the share, and time for Kiddush. Wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat Shalom to those here and to those watching.